Attorney General Phil Weiser, thank you, sir, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule. 5 people died and several others were injured at a shooting at a gay nightclub in Colorado Springs over the weekend. First of all, can I get your thoughts on this crime?
I am heartbroken, pained, and struggling to understand how we have such a toxic brew of hate that leads people to attack what had been known as a safe haven. The people who were there were living their authentic lives in what felt like it was a safe space. People had come from all of Southern Colorado, and that was turned into a mass shooting. We've lost 5 people, many more were injured. So I am struggling, I'm mourning. I'm also seeing rays of sunlight. Richard Fierro represents what's best in America. He served our nation. He came back and was processing the trauma that he had and was there with his wife, who is a celebrated Latina business owner, was there with his daughter and his daughter's boyfriend who was killed that night. Richard Fierro is an American hero. His family is a great American story of inclusivity, of serving and supporting others. So I'm struck by the contrast of a killer motivated by hate with access to dangerous firearms and an American hero motivated by love, supporting his community. And so that's a lot for me to process.
What kind of assistance has your office extended to the law enforcement community in Colorado Springs?
The district attorney's office will be responsible for prosecuting this case, and our office will be responsible for the appeal. I've reached out to the district attorney and said, we need to make sure that we support you in every way we can. This is a case that will be part of a process of healing for the community. Getting justice for the victims is going to be important. Making sure that we prosecute bias-motivated crimes to the fullest extent of the law is going to be important. So we look forward to working with the El Paso County District Attorney's Office and supporting the district attorney in this prosecution. We also look forward to learning from how we better advance gun safety. The red flag law in Colorado is relatively new. We need to make sure we're using it effectively. Whether we missed red flags in this case or in other cases are learning opportunities that we want to make sure that we think about and we do better in the future.
You mentioned our state's red flag law, and obviously people have many questions about this shooting, this tragedy. The first is that it appears that the suspect was arrested in a bomb threat incident last year. Ultimately, it looks like no formal charges were pursued. Let me add, though, that authorities have not confirmed if it's the same person as the suspect of the Club Q shooting. We do know that this person has the same name and age. I wonder if you've been briefed about this potential connection from this bombing threat incident from 2021. And if yes, what can you tell us about it?
So it's too soon to look back and ask what happened, why did it happen, what did we miss? What we do know is there will be that opportunity, and it's an important opportunity. The mindset that Colorado law enforcement has is one of continuous improvement. How do we do better? How do we better protect public safety, particularly against gun violence, which we know we've seen way too much of here in Colorado? This red flag law will only be as good as people are able to use it. We had the same conversation in Boulder after a mass shooting there, which is, were there opportunities to do something earlier? We're going to keep working on how we better educate law enforcement and the public about this law so that where we can remove firearms from somebody who's a significant risk to other people or even themselves, we do so.
Yeah, you're right. The red flag law in our state is relatively new. As far as we can tell, hundreds of red flag cases, law enforcement and others have pursued hundreds of them. As best as we can tell, there wasn't one pursued here. We could be wrong there, but as far as we can tell, there was not one here. I was wondering if you could kind of, speculate is I hate using the word speculate, but what might have been some of the reasons why there wasn't one pursued here, if that indeed is what happened?
One of the learning opportunities is as different law enforcement agencies become more comfortable with this red flag procedure. We've seen in our office analyzed in the first year of the red flag law that different law enforcement agencies are more likely than other law enforcement agencies to use this important tool. We need to make sure that all law enforcement agencies understand this tool, see its value, and use it appropriately. In the first year, for example, there, I believe, were about 100 red flag orders, and they were all executed appropriately without law enforcement being put in a dangerous situation. That was one of the initial concerns about the law, is it could endanger law enforcement. We're learning how to use this procedure in a way that is safe and that removes firearms without any risk to law enforcement. And what we're seeing is when we don't remove firearms from people who are a danger to themselves or others, that creates a real risk of tragedy. This law, of course, came from the murder of Zachary Parrish, who was a law enforcement officer serving in Douglas County and was asked to be in harm's way in the case of someone who lots of people knew was a dangerous person and had access to firearms.
Looking at how this law has been implemented so far, are you considering, or would you consider pushing for changes, tweaking it, for example, in the next legislative session?
My judgment is our red flag law is an effective and important tool, and the real limiting factor is a lack of awareness and comfort in using it. In terms of our emphasis, therefore, we're pursuing funding and educational outreach efforts so that we better use this law. There have been some studies comparing Colorado's red flag law to other states' red flag laws, suggesting we maybe use it less than some other states. My view is we're still getting used to this law. Indiana passed a red flag law in 2006. That means they've had a lot more experience with the red flag law than Colorado's had. We're going to keep working hard on training, on education, so law enforcement becomes more comfortable and versed with this important tool.
Sir, correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is that depending on the jurisdiction, the enforcement, if you will, is varied. And what you're saying is that your challenge now is trying to get more jurisdictions, more law enforcement communities to buy into this law.
There are two challenges. One is, are all law enforcement agencies accepting that this is a tool worth using? And the second is, insofar as an agency is going to use the tool, are they well equipped to understand how to use it, when to use it? On the first point, we've made a lot of progress. When this red flag law was debated, 32 jurisdictions said we're not going to use it. Since then, at last count, 20 of them have already used it. And for example, Sheriff Robert Jackson in the San Luis Valley said he wasn't sure he was comfortable with the red flag law. He's now embraced this tool and is using it. We know, however, even if you're willing to use it, there's still procedures about how you use it, when to use it, what it takes to justify removing a firearm. And we want to make sure that all jurisdictions have that information and are able to use this tool effectively.
So, sir, as far as you can tell, about a dozen jurisdictions then have so far refused to use this law.
The last reporting that I've seen identified around a dozen jurisdictions as having yet to use it and having said they're not comfortable. That number may have changed, and given what has been the trajectory, which is increasing comfort with this tool, our goal would be for every law enforcement agency to accept that this tool has a proper use, can and is in fact a life-saving tool, and understands how to use it when appropriate.
One final question before I let you go. There are calls for action at the state capitol. And obviously, the legislative session is going to start in January. Are you thinking of any other proposals that your office might be pursuing on the issue of gun safety and gun violence?
Our focus is really on this red flag law and to make sure it's used properly, to make sure that we collaborate with our state's Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and to continue to work to defend our laws. We know there's increasing Second Amendment challenges that are coming. A red flag law, for example, could be challenged. Our magazine capacity limit law is actually being challenged. We're committed to defending and implementing these gun safety measures and to work to support legislative discussions as they proceed.
Attorney General Phil Weiser, thank you for your time, sir. Is there anything else you want to add?
I just want to add a word or two about rising hate in our society. What we need to all do is recognize that the level of hating and demonization can lay the groundwork for violence. We've worked with ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and other partners in a hate-free Colorado effort. And there was a vigil last night that represents an important principle. Hate against any group, LGBTQ individuals, Asian Americans, Jews, African Americans, is hate against any group. We have to stand firm on this principle. We have to tone down the rhetoric. It's America's founding vision and ethos, e pluribus unum. From many, we are one. We need to honor that work now more than ever.
Attorney General, thank you for your time, sir. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you now.